Hello and welcome back to the Play It Forward podcast, the podcast presented by PeacePlayers, where we lift up voices and the stories of people working in their communities and networks to promote peace and equity. My name is Chinny Nwagbo and I am your host. And I have just been cracking up and laughing this morning, but happy I could get through that first part. And I'm so excited about today's episode where we will be speaking to our very special guest on the importance of understanding the role and the impact of anxiety in our lives. And I think that's pretty powerful stuff, especially now during this time. So I'm excited about that, about this conversation, but I can't go any further without introducing to you all the man of the hour, my very special and amazing co-host, Emmett Shepard.
Guys, I'm just a normal guy like you guys. Like, seriously, I'm not anything. I'm not a celebrity, guys. I just like live. I put pants on the same way, just like you guys. Hi, hello, Chinny. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. How are you? I'm doing great. I cannot
I'm pretty
complain.
good. I'm excited. I got out of bed earlier today, which is a big deal. So our guest should feel very special in that case that I got out of bed today rather than stayed in bed till noon. But, hello. Good listeners of the Play It Forward podcast. My name is Emmett Shepard. I'm the co-host, the beautifully intelligent and beautifully good-looking Chinny Nwagbo.
Thank you.
Chinny, I just want to cut straight to the chase because I want to know the impact of anxiety in our lives because I struggle with anxiety like most young people do. So who is the very fortunate person we're getting to talk to today? Tell the people who we're talking to.
Thank you, Emmett. Our guest today comes from a slightly different background than some of the previous guests that we've had on the show. She is a psychotherapist based in Concord, New Hampshire, and has been practicing 30 years. That's a lot of time. 30 years. That's applause right there.
Yeah.
Her work focuses on anxiety in adults and children, and as a result, has made her a highly sought out expert, being interviewed by the New York Times, Time, NPR, Psychology, today, which also happens to be my favorite read. It's my favorite read, but I can't get the words out of my mouth, so I'm sorry about that. And The Atlantic. Not only has she done all that, but she's also an author of several books and articles and is our co-host. Very special and amazing guest. Actually, probably family member, really. I don't even know, how long that goes. But ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Lynn Lyons. Welcome, Lynn. Hey, Lynn.
Welcome.
Hey, hi guys. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was a very nice introduction. Thank you.
Even though I stumbled over my words because you like have my heart pounding over here, but
that's right.
Yeah.
Emmett, I appreciate you both getting out of bed and putting on your pants.
Yeah, pants aren't on, but I have a top half on because you can't see it on the Zoom. But
You're right.
Save it.
That was an assumption on my part. All right.
No, it's okay. Eventually pants will come on. But
okay.
Lynn, I don't know if you know this. I don't know if
she has to
you're
know
very close
by now.
with my mom.
She has to.
My mom and you talk a lot, but there's
just
little birdies. There's little birdies around, you know.
Yes.
And they say things like, "Have you heard about the Icebreaker King? Do you know that this person exists?" I didn't put this title on me. This was given to me by the masses.
Right.
And so we like to do this first thing on the show to sort of, as one would, break the ice with an icebreaker.
Okay.
So articulate, Chinny.
You are. You are. Don't worry.
And so today's icebreaker is, what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Okay. Do you want it to be professionally?
Anything that,
All right. Well, the first thing that pops into my head, it was a little bit of professional advice, but it sort of fits other situations too. So I used to work in this mental health agency, and I was a youngster. I was a baby therapist, as I call them now. And I worked with a bunch of great people, including this guy named Craig, who was a former Baltimore cop who was in recovery from alcoholism. And he had lost a son, and he had also got in the middle of a domestic violence incident in which half of his body sort of was forever impaired. But he was an awesome guy. So he went through all of that, and then he became a therapist helping people stay sober. So this is the guy that gave me the advice. So we had a head of our agency who was let me use a clinical term, nuts. And
okay, yeah.
So one day, Craig and I were holed up in his office, pretending we were having some important meeting, but we were just sort of killing time.
Mm-hmm.
I was licensed, so I was a baby therapist, but I was fully licensed, so I could go out on my own. He couldn't, because in the state of Pennsylvania, master's level psychologists couldn't practice independently. And he said to me this day, as we were dealing with the nuttiness, he said, "What the heck are you doing here? You need to get out. You can do it." Like, he was like, "Fly, little bird, go, go, go." And so I did. So it was a little, I guess it was a little risky, and maybe even a little, I don't know. It wasn't really ill-advised. It was really good advice, but I was young. So I left the agency where they were paying me, not a lot of money. I got away from the crazy supervisor. I opened my own practice at 28.
Wow.
27. And then off I went. But he was the guy sitting there in our office, and the two of us were just like, "Ugh," and he was just like, "Go, go." And that was really, really good advice. So I went.
Do you keep his sort of in other times, even big or small, in those moments where you have to take a leap, I imagine you still have that echoing voice of just get out, do it.
Do it. Yeah. I mean, he was this and I actually, it makes me think I need to be back in touch with him, because I think about him all the time. But he was really such an amazing human being to run into it early in my career. I've run into a lot of amazing people, but he was just this like solid, he'd been through so much shit, and he was just fabulous.
I'm kind of like just letting that sit with me. Get out. And when you say get out, it resonates with me. By just saying, like, kind of lift your platform, extend your reach. Your voice needs to be heard. Do the work that matters, that serves others. And I think this is a really good place to start about the get out. But I just want to know about your career. Like, how do you get into psychotherapy? Like, and not just that, but we're talking about anxiety, and you're working with children and adults. Take us on a journey on how you get there specifically. I heard a bit about the story about the get out, but how did you get there?
So when I went to graduate school, which I tried my best to avoid, actually.
Okay.
I was in college. I was in college with Emmett's mother.
Very nice. Very nice.
And we were English majors. And I knew I had taken a lot of psychology courses. Just so you know, a full disclosure, my lowest grade ever in my academic career was in Psychology 101, which wasn't really entirely my fault. My roommates told me that you didn't have to go to class. And that's so I found out
you don't have to do anything, really. You don't have to do anything.
I did it. Yeah. So it's actually solid advice. I didn't have to go. So anyway, so I finished college sort of thinking, I really want to be a therapist, but that will require graduate school. Right. And I thought, I don't really want to do that. So I decided actually that I would try out advertising. Right. So I got a job at an advertising agency, and actually one of their big accounts was Colt Firearms. Okay. And one of my jobs was to just sit all day and look through Guns and Ammo, Soldier of Fortune, and just figure out what the best media buys would be for this company that made guns. And so as I'm sitting there in my little cubicle, I'm thinking, I just don't think this is what I want to do. So I sucked it up. And I went back to graduate school. I decided to get my MSW because it is an incredibly versatile degree. I will tell you that on my first day of graduate school, so I'm sitting in the big auditorium at the Boston University School of Social Work, and the dean of the school at that point said to all of us incoming people, if you have come here to be a therapist, you have come to the wrong place. Right. And I thought, crap. Right. So I thought, all right, okay. So I just sort of kept that to myself because that's what I really wanted to do. I wanted to do clinical work. And I get what he was saying. He really wanted us to make sure that he was really supporting community involvement and political action and all that kind of stuff. So I went to graduate school, I got my degree, and then the learning started. So that's when I started figuring out how I was going to be in this profession, what I wanted to be in this profession. I worked for the first 2 years. I worked as a family therapist on an inpatient psychiatry unit with an incredible mentor, the psychiatrist, Don West, taught me so much. Then I went to the agency that I told you about where Craig said, get out. And when I was down there too, I also met another one of my very important mentors. He's Michael Yapko, who is one of the world's leading experts in depression. Fantastic. That was sort of a lucky thing too. And I started doing the kind of work I do now, which was really focused on offering solutions to people in a very concrete way. So the people that I came in contact with, the people who taught me how to do this job, I think probably the reason I was attracted to them, or the reason why I meshed so well with them, is that it was really about, let's figure out what the problem is and let's offer solutions. And I liked that way of active, concrete doing stuff. So I was doing a lot of different things. I was working with families. I didn't really work with little kids at the beginning of my career because I was still a little kid, actually. But then, and this is how sort of I got like wholly into the anxiety thing, Michael said, I think you should submit a proposal to speak at this one national conference that went on for psychotherapists. He said, they have, like the fancy people, and then there are all these people who can come in and present their work. And I think you should do that. So I said, yes, which I do tend to say yes to things. And he said, you need to pick a topic that you really like, because if you do a good job with this, this is what you're going to be known for. So think about what you want to present. Because if you go in there into this national conference and you nail it, this is where your career will go. We'll go. So I thought about that and I thought, well, I really like anxiety and I really like anxious kids. And I think that's a really concrete thing. You can really fix them. Like, I feel like you can make progress. So that's what I did my talk on. And then it went well, I guess. And I got noticed. And then somebody asked me to write a book, Reed Wilson. And so we wrote a book together, Anxious Kids, Anxious Parents. And we wrote another book together. And then that's what I've been doing since. So that's how it all sort of happened. Yeah.
The two things. One, I'm always curious and fascinated with the concreteness of like your mind in general, in just terms of like, is this a fixable problem? If so, yes. If not, and like sort of working your way down the diagram sort of thing. For our listeners also, like, I want to start before we get sort of into the nitty gritty of sort of, is your methodology or your cooking recipe for handling anxiety, obviously it's maybe different for kids or adults, maybe it's the same thing, but I imagine also over time, how much of it is changing in that initial cooking recipe? Is it just a few teaspoons changed for each sort of ingredient, or is it more so, this is sort of a standard cooking recipe that I know from my years of practice that actually work pretty consistently?
I want to add something onto that too. And does it change with things like the presence of COVID? Does it change with the presence of Black Lives Matter? Do those change your recipe and affect things as well?
Yeah.
Great question.
Yeah. So the recipe has definitely been honed over the years. And I think the way that I think about anxiety, and this is where I probably differ from a lot of people that deal with anxiety, is the thing that you worry about, the thing that you get anxious about is generally the least important thing to me. Not that it doesn't,
Okay.
not that it doesn't matter, but what I'm very interested in is helping people understand how anxiety works. Because whether it's about, you know, bumblebees or COVID or Black Lives Matter or throwing up or talking to people, anxiety, the thing about anxiety is that it is wonderfully, delightfully redundant. And what happens sometimes is that when people are trying to deal with their anxiety, and my field loves to do this, it's like we have to have all these different categories and all these different recipes. So it's like, well, we need a recipe for social anxiety, and we need a recipe for panic attacks, and we need a recipe for generalized anxiety disorder. You really don't, actually.
Yeah.
Right.
You need, and maybe it's sort of like you need a starter recipe, like you're going to make banana bread, and maybe you're going to put in chocolate chips, and maybe you're going to put in walnuts, or maybe you're going to do this. But the basic recipe is the same. And that's, and when people learn that, then they feel better equipped to handle whatever comes at them. And so being able to handle whatever life throws at you, what I want to give people is the ability to go inside and pull out the resources that they need. Because life is so unpredictable.
That's right.
And where people sort of get caught in the weeds with anxiety is they treat all the different contents as if they are different problems.
Right.
And it really is just the same problem. You know, of course, there are different details, but it's the same problem. So I feel like my job is to give you the starter recipe that then you can apply to a variety of situations. And one of the things that happens in my practice all the time is, you know, I'll see somebody when they're 6, and then they come back to see me when they're 12, and then they come back to see me when they're expecting their first baby. The pattern is the same. The content is different when you're worried about having your baby, or you're worried about this or that. So I tend to push back or resist what happens in a lot of mental health stuff, where we have to slice this thing with such a fine, you know, we have to make little tiny slices, because it just makes it confusing. And I honestly think that that's what turns a lot of people off from my field, because in many ways, I find the field that I'm in really annoying. And I get it. Right? I just think that we can be really annoying, and I work very hard to be the opposite of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the more ingredients you have, it sort of, it makes perfect sense how you would feel or overwhelmed, and that triggers that. I'm also like, in terms of that sort of through your entire sort of career, dealing with anxiety, both from the lens of a kid versus the lens of an adult, how much of it is entrenched in like nature versus nurture, where you see, you know, who's more willing to try that recipe? I would imagine kids are, but then there's this backdrop of the trickle down effect of anxiety coming from mom or dad kind of thing that has sort of led them to be like, oh, I'm kind of afraid to go in the kitchen in the first place. I'm going to keep with this baking analogy that
Right.
But so in terms of just what are your, you know, thoughts and opinions on, is there a distinct difference between the two? More so, is it more so nature versus nurture, and just that dynamic of anxiety between kids and adults?
I like that question. That's pretty good.
Well, there's definitely, that's pretty good. That is
that's pretty good. It's pretty good.
It's a combination, of course. But the thing that we really want to pay attention to, and I talk to families about this all the time, because I don't see kids alone, by the way, in my practice. Like, it makes no sense to me that I'm talking to an 8-year-old and I'm teaching them all that I know about how worry works, and the parents are sitting out in the waiting room. Like, the 8-year-old isn't going to get in the car on the way home and say, like, okay, so I know our family's been anxious since since like 1867. So I, the second grader, am now going to be I'm going to be in charge of turning this ship around, right? So that just makes no sense to me. But a lot of people do it. So it's a combination, because we're social creatures, because we learn from our other human beings, right? We're always trying to figure out where we fit and where we don't fit. You cannot take the nurture out of it. Right. And so where nature comes in, there's no anxiety gene, there's no depression gene, but there are certain things that are definitely heritable traits, they're called, that are absolutely a part of your genetic makeup. So temperament, for example.
Wow. Okay.
Right. So there are certain types of temperament that put you more at risk. So it's not a done deal, but if you have something called a behaviorally inhibited temperament, which again is just an annoying term for people who are sort of like, oh God, the world is too much for me. Like there are kids that are going to go to the swimming pool and just like jump in. Yay. Right. One of my sons will just like jump in with his clothes on. Right. He didn't even take his clothes off. Jump in.
Right.
And then there are other kids who are going to put like one toe in, or they're even going to stand back and watch. So that's a difference in temperament.
Yeah.
And we know that can set you up. Here's the problem with things that are heritable, things that are genetic. That means it's likely that your parent or one of your parents probably has that same temperament. Right. So now, right. So here we have somebody who's behaviorally inhibited working on trying to raise a child who also may have that same susceptibility. So we know that's the case. They're always doing research to try and figure out that, like, the science of this field always wants to come up with the answer. Like, what's the chemical? What's the this? What's the that? I just tend to see, the way that I look at it is that there are things that put you at risk. And some of them are genetic. Right. A lot of them are environmental. A lot of them come from how your parents teach you about the world and the world that you're living in. So it's this combination. And anxiety, remember, anxiety isn't an accurate assessment of the world. Right. Because if you are living in a place in which you are in danger and you are responding to that danger, exactly. That's not anxiety. Right. That's a good way of keeping yourself alive. Right.
Stress as well.
Right. So anxiety is really and one of the things I talk about with families all the time, and David Barlow, who ran Boston University's Center for Anxiety Disorders, he said anxiety was an overestimation of the problem and an underestimation of your resources to deal with it. Right. So it's a mismatch. But if you're really in a situation in which there really is a problem, we're not going to say, oh, you're anxious about this. We're going to say this is legitimate and we need to keep you safe. That's the big difference.
I think, and before we get to this fun part, you made it's a great question. I'm sitting here like shaking in my feet. Yeah. What I want to know here is, we talk about anxiety, we talk about that inherent trait that you may get from your parent, but what about the anxiety that exists it's an imposition from parents, right? Imposition from families, right? And you're trying to teach this child, hey, this is what your anxiety looks like. These are the tools to mitigate that, to get through, or here's the perspective of what there's a different perspective to serve this anxiety. How do you help the child, I don't want to say disassociate, or the family member disassociate from the mom who is always anxious, and then you tend to be anxious because of your mom, or let's bring it back to communities, underserved communities, right? Where anxiety is non-existent. Right. You're telling a child, hey, you're suffering from anxiety, but the parents are saying, no, that doesn't exist. Yeah. And we find that in with people of color and in these communities or underserved communities, anxiety is not addressed. Mental health awareness is not addressed. So you, coming from your perspective, how do you plant the seed? How do you get people first listening? Because you have to first listen, and then accepting the fact that maybe this anxiety is from outside sources, parents, and then talking to the parents who don't even see the anxiety and saying, hey, this is what this is, and getting them to buy into these tools to help youth or themselves. That's long-winded, but yes.
Yeah, well, but that's those two words that you used are so important, right? Buy-in. Right. How do we get buy-in? And this is the dance that I'm doing all the time, because I want parents to be able to recognize that being anxious and being worried are really normal states of being human beings. Nobody goes through this without getting anxious and worried. And how do I say to parents in a way that they can hear, right? Because I always feel like I'm delivering the tray of hors d'oeuvres, and my goal is to get you to be like, oh, that's interesting, rather than say like, I'm not going to take that.
Yeah.
How do I get you to buy in, and how do I get you to accept in a way that doesn't feel shaming, that doesn't feel blaming, right? Blame and shame doesn't really help you get what you need. By really saying that, and the phrase that I use is, I say, this isn't about blame, but it is about responsibility. So if there are things that we know help, let's learn those things. And I try and make it as concrete as possible, because a lot of people, one thing that my field has not done a good job with is they have not done a good job with stigma, because it is actually the opposite of what they think. The more that we talk, and the research is bearing this out now, it's very interesting research. The more that we talk about mental illness as a disease, the more we talk about it as biology, the more we talk about it as a chemical imbalance, that actually pushes people away. The more we talk about it as what happened to you, the more we talk about it in the context of relationships, in the context of community, in the context of empathy, in the context of connection, the more that people come together. And what all of these mental health awareness campaigns have tried to do is to say, this struggle that you're having with anxiety or depression, this is just like diabetes, this is just like this is just like that. And people don't respond well to that. But they do respond well to, you know what, this is part of being a human. And anybody who grew up in that situation, or anybody that had to deal with this environment, or anybody that was raised in a family that for generations didn't know how to manage their anxiety, that's something we can all relate to, because there is no family that goes through life without anxiety or depression or substance abuse.
That's correct.
There's no family. So the way that I try and offer my information, because I really feel like I'm offering information, is to really just normalize it and to make it a part of human suffering. Absolutely. And not make it this thing like, well, you have this illness, or you have this disease, or you have this disability. Interestingly, high school students that I talk to are very much in this is a disability camp. And it is not serving them well. It's not serving them well. So that's a fight that I'm always sort of trying to figure out. That's a rope that I'm always trying to balance. That's not a good analogy. I'm trying to figure that out. I'm walking a fine line. I'm walking a fine line. Yeah.
No, my mom clearly listens to you all the time, because one of her phrases that rings true throughout all of the Shepard family is, whenever me and my sister and my brother are going through something, she always says, feel all the feelings. Just feel all the feelings. It's part of the human experience.
Yeah.
It's so true.
And there's a huge sweet spot of all the things we're going to feel. And one of the things that the anxiety treatment often does, and we've got this with depression too, is there's a lot of what I call elimination strategies. So the goal is to try and get rid of the worry, get rid of the feeling. And so we use, or just allowing it to be there. Right. Like, you don't have to listen to it. The thought can pop up and you could be like, oh, there's my worry.
Right.
But we focus on distraction. We focus on, social media, distraction, avoidance, which actually makes anxiety stronger, of course, self-medication. What are the things that I can do so I don't have to feel this? Right. That is the exact opposite message that we want to give, because it's going to show up. And trying to get rid of it, particularly with anxiety, the more you try and get rid of it, the stronger it gets. What you resist persists.
Yeah.
And
what you resist persists.
What you resist persists. And so the more that you say, oh, I can't feel this way, or why am I feeling this way? Or the shameful should, right? Like, I shouldn't feel this way.
Right.
Well, of course you should feel this way. That's what I always say. Like, the two words I can't live without in my job are, of course. Of course you should feel this way because this just happened to you, or you're stepping into this situation, or, or your mom has been telling you for 20 years that you're, going to die if you, right. Of course. And then I can see people physically feel relief when, instead of me saying, well, let me teach you this to get rid of those feelings, I say, yeah, of course you feel that way. Yeah. Why wouldn't you feel that way? And they're sort of like, oh yeah.
Perfect.
Unbelievable. Sit in that jacuzzi of feelings, people. Just sit in the jacuzzi.
Sit in it. Enjoy it. Yes.
Water will get warmer.
Yeah, but understand it and then attack it. That's really good.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Let's take an exhale. Let's take a quick exhale.
Okay, let's do it.
We dive back in. So, Chinny, explain to her what we're doing.
We are getting ready to play this most amazing show on our show, the amazing show on our show. And it's called the lightning round. It is called the lightning round. It's amazing and fun. And he's pointing at himself because he is the lightning round king.
I keep giving you lightning rods. These were lightning rods.
Keep giving you the title of the lightning round king, and it's really fun. So Emma's going to ask you a series of questions. You have about 3 to 4 seconds to answer those questions.
Oh my gosh!
We'll have timers here. We will enjoy your answers. Emmett will.
We will just judge you heavily on
there
each answer, so don't worry about it. Don't worry.
Judgment is also part of the human experience.
It
is.
Yes, immense judgment.
Yes.
That's what my sister tells me all the time. She's like, judgment is just, it means I love you, Emmett, and I judge you heavily.
Right.
Okay. You got the clock, Chinny. You got the clock?
got it. I'm ready.
Lynn, you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So, baseball or soccer?
Baseball.
Okay. Still water or seltzer water?
Seltzer.
Flying or driving?
Driving.
Oh, good job.
Dry or humid?
Dry.
The book version or the movie version?
Book.
Yeah.
Readers.
Are you a little bit country or a little bit rock and roll?
Based on, I only have a few seconds to answer. Based on the fact that my husband has been playing 80s rock on the radio, and if I hear one more Leonard Skinner song, I'm going to throw myself off the roof. I'm going to go with a little bit country.
Okay. That works.
Okay. Who wins a game of basketball? A taco or a grilled cheese?
Oh, grilled cheese.
Yeah,
really?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see it. Big body, Chinny. Big body.
Flexible, more flexible.
Got you.
Summer or Winter Olympics?
Summer.
Good.
Okay. Art museums or history museums?
History.
Really? Okay, sorry.
Ninjas or pirates?
Pirates.
Which do you prefer, a horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
I'm gonna go with a horse-sized duck.
Yeah, big duck. Very
big duck.
Meditation or exercise?
Exercise.
Comedy or drama?
Comedy.
The last thing you taught someone else to do?
Oh gosh. That's hard. I taught somebody how to deliver a therapy session in a consultation session.
Whoa.
I gave a bunch
nice.
of people language to use. Yeah.
Paying it forward.
Very
I
good.
love that. A time you did not follow your own advice?
Ooh, I like this one.
When I had a bad sinus infection and I didn't go to the doctor, but I took my cat's antibiotics.
Oh my goodness. Sorry.
And apparently the dosage was off and I ended up almost dead in the hospital with my brain filled with pus.
Okay, that's not funny.
God.
No,
this was last week. This was last week.
Yeah, this is like week. No, this was many years ago. Yeah. Okay. But I mean, I was doubled over in pain from this sinus infection. And not only did I not take my own advice, but I didn't take my friend doctor's advice. And I just tried to push through with the cat antibiotics and it didn't work.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my God. Okay. Last one. One thing you would want listeners to remember from today.
That it is okay to feel anxious and worried, that it's not a disability. It is a part of being a human being. And that this is a social issue, not a chemical issue. It's a social issue.
I like the mic drop there.
That
was awesome. How do you feel? You did a great job.
You got through it.
Thanks.
We'll tally up the points. We'll tally up the points and send you it via email with our thoughts, comments, concerns.
Is there I'm pretty competitive. Is there like a ranking or
Yeah,
how do you?
You're number one.
It will be posted on Twitter, so
Okay.
just for the world to see.
Okay.
Don't worry.
Yeah.
Okay, because I want to be on the podium.
Yeah, you are for sure.
You are
for
one
sure.
of the fastest ones for sure. We've had some people who've taken their sweet time answering, which is not part of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, they're still answering, but that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. That was awesome. Thank you so much. So now we're going to transition into the meatier, heavier. Just kidding. It's going to be the exact same amazing show. But
okay.
So I don't know, Lynn, if you know
cry.
that we are an organization that uses sports, specifically basketball, to address peace and equity. And we know anecdotally the positive impact that sports can have on youth and adults. And my question is, can you share with us from your perspective how you've seen sports and fun play like a positive role or have a positive impact in addressing anxiety?
Yes. So I'm way into sports, and I played sports all through high school, and love like competitive sports, love fun sports. So from a personal perspective, sports were sort of where I found my joy in a lot of my childhood, and where I found my connection with people. So I'm all in on that. So in terms of anxiety, one of the things that anxiety hates is uncertainty.
Right.
Anxiety wants things to go a certain way. And so when you step into that competitive arena, you are stepping into a real combination of, did I prepare enough? Did I do what I needed to do? Followed by, things are going to be unpredictable. And so over and over again, sports and play and teams are such a good arena for kids to experience disappointment, loss, I always talk to kids about how to be a good loser, how to be a good winner. How do you manage the normal anxiety of stepping up to the start line? How do you manage the pressure of not wanting to let your teammates down? How do you handle the disappointment when things don't go the way you want them to go, or when you screw up and you have to own that? I think that there is just such an enormous ability. I mean, it really is a place that I think has been neglected, actually, in terms of mental health treatment. And when I talk about not only the playfulness part of it, but actually physical activity, we know that physical activity is actually often more effective than antidepressants for the treatment of depression. When we talk about kids being outside, when we talk about the arena that they have in which they are interacting with other people, I say all the time, actually, if I had to pick one thing that I could force my clients to do, I would pick active exercise, playfulness, exercise, being in sports, teams. It is just so important. So important. I think one of the things that's been kind of interesting recently, and if you notice it though, it's really for the most part, it happens more in individual sports than in team sports, but that athletes coming forward and saying, the pressure that I experience in this domain is too much for me to bear.
Exactly.
And I think we need to pay attention to that. Yeah. Have you guys actually seen the documentary, The Weight of Gold, that's narrated by you guys should watch that.
Yeah.
The Weight of Gold.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The Weight of Gold.
By who?
Michael Phelps.
Oh,
and
wow.
it's about
yeah. I've seen
it's about Olympic athletes. And it's about depression and Olympic athletes, what happens after the Olympics. It is really powerful. It is really sad. It's really sad,
it's really
actually.
sad.
Yeah. So I feel like sports and play is such a great way to learn so many things that are valuable for connection and mental health. And I also think it's a place where things can really go south. And I see a lot of that in parenting. Yeah.
I mean, and Chinny, you've probably experienced this too. All of us have probably experienced the idea of like, you're on a sports team and there's a kid that's your teammate who you know to be a good kid, like doesn't have a lot of serious childhood trauma or anything like that, but his dad usually the dad or some parental figure is at the game and creating this immense amount of tension and pressure, and is like almost like in my case, there were parents who were completely vocal about always critiquing the kids' performance mid-game and stuff like that. And you could just see over time a complete change in demeanor in that kid's behavior around the world, and his like passion and drive for the sport completely shifts. His like ability to interact with his parents and also like the people around him would shift, become more aggressive, become more recluse, become more depressive. So
absolutely
big role. They play a big role. Yeah.
I was at my son played baseball in high school, and we were at a game, and there was this one kid who was like one of the star players and they lost the game. It was a playoff game. I think that he was pitching, this kid. And the dad, who was like known as a jerk, we all knew that he was a jerk baseball dad. He went up, he hugged his kid, and he said in his ear, he said in the kid's ear, and I heard it, "You let your team down."
Oh my God.
So he's using sports as a tool to destroy,
not bridge divides, not
create connection,
and he's using sports as a tool to really create more anxiety, right? More pain, but
anger.
We Coach does a really great job of it, and I don't know if this is the right thing, but it's like regulation or deregulation or something where you can create an environment where you feel heard. They learn how to deal with good stress, right? And good stress in some way helps them with their mental health and wellness, and in a way helps them with dealing with anxiety. But I don't know, they say it in such a articulate way. I'm unsure of how they do it, but it starts with our opening circle and, you know, things that are very much scheduled and letting youth know that this is what's coming, you know, having coaches that are positive, not like what you guys have told me about these coaches, but and I say all that to say, because I'm really curious about this, and then Emmett has like this brilliant question that I'm sure he wants to ask, but is anxiety, and I think that this is what the teaching is, or the We Coach, or what they're trying to enforce here, is that anxiety, and I don't know if this is right, so correct me if I'm wrong, is it your perspective on how you receive anxiety? Is anxiety the same component as, I tell people this, anxiety is the same component as excitement. It's just your perspective on it. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if it's the same energy, but
I mean, it's the same energy. It's the same system in your brain. And anxiety really is about your interpretation of what you're experiencing. And so I can give you a really actually cool example of this.
Please.
A girl came to see me. She was a college student, and she was having difficulty staying in class because she was having like these panic symptoms when she was in her lectures. She was a Division I swimmer at the top of her game. But when she swam, she didn't have that same response. So I said to her, when you're standing on the pool deck, getting ready to swim in the NCAA championships, and you're standing there, how does that feel different than when you're sitting in your chemistry lab? The responses in her body were exactly the same. But her interpretation of them was completely different. And I talk a lot about step 1 and step 2. Step 1 is you're going to have a thought, a feeling, a sensation. Step 2 is how you interpret it. And if you are in a situation in which there is room for those experiences, where it's okay that you have them, where they're even put in a positive light, right? Like we need to get psyched up for this or whatever. Your interpretation of that stress, because a certain amount of stress is helpful to our bodies. But if we interpret it as something that we're supposed to get rid of, something that's going to get in the way, something that we shouldn't feel, then that step 2 is the panic about the symptoms. And that's what turns this thing into a disorder. It's not that you're feeling anxiety, it's how you interpret it. And there's even a term for it. It's called anxiety sensitivity. And anxiety sensitivity is an overreaction to normal anxiety symptoms in your body. And that is really what happens oftentimes. Athletes get used to feeling this way, and they're told you're supposed to feel this way, and it's good that you feel this way. And we talk about it as energy.
Right.
And then you have other situations where we say, oh, I'm getting on a plane. Well, I'm not supposed to feel this way, right? I'm not supposed to feel this way. And then we push back against it. And the more you push back against anxiety, the stronger and more out of control it gets.
Absolutely.
So you're exactly correct. It's this interpretation of the symptoms that you're feeling.
So it's like in terms of just like tangible things that like people can take, it is you can never be too, or maybe I'm wrong, but you can never be too self-aware in a sense where the more self-aware you are, the more you have an ability to navigate and understand how you're interacting with anxiety, depression, any of these things, and being able to like almost disassociate yourself in that moment and do these sort of like, oh, I'm feeling this right now. Why am I feeling this way? Let's sit in it for a sec and almost like massage that emotion out like a muscle kind of thing.
Yep. A little bit, but that can kind of go too far, Emmett, because because anxiety and depression are both internalizing disorders, they're called. So what that means is that when you start experiencing or thinking about it, you go inside. And if you go inside too much, and if you are asking these why questions because you need an answer and you have to figure this out, then you're also doing the disorder, as I say. So you want that self-awareness to say, oh, there's my worry. Now, what I actually do is I want to externalize it. So I want to give it a name. I want to call it, Joanne or Joyce or,
F and Joanne. Yeah.
Right.
I know every time I see a Joanne, I'm like, Joanne. Right.
Yeah. And you want to create a little bit of distance from it.
Right.
Because then you can be aware of it and you want to become a curious observer of your own experiences.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because when you go inside and you're like, why am I feeling this way? Oh my gosh, here comes that resistance again. So it's really about dropping the resistance. And the cool thing with anxiety, if I can get somebody to actually step into it on purpose, like, let's go, bring it on. So when I'm talking to athletes about this, it's really easy for me because I use a lot of sports analogies, but I'm like, I need you on offense with this thing.
Oh,
I need you to be like, here we go.
Let's
be on offense. Because when you're on defense, right? When you're in a defensive posture, I want you on offense. Let's go.
Right. No, I mean, with Peace Players in general, and Chinny's going to attest to this with her last question too. My sort of final one is like, conflict is such a prevalent topic among Peace Players. All of our sites that we have are very meticulously chosen for historical conflict reasons. And so Peace Players is about bridging that divide, but having to bridge that divide, external conflict and internal conflict are going to come up, not amongst just the young people that are participating, but also coaches, staff, the people that are integrated amongst the kids who are leading discussions and workshops. And, for a lot of these kids, that sort of historical conflict is either very prevalent still or just is in the backdrop to some degree. And so being able to, leaving external conflict aside, even though it is so heavily linked to an internal conflict for young people, is like, how much of the anxiety that's associated with the internal conflicts that young people are dealing with, specifically our young people, I say our, meaning Peace Players, people, why, like, giving them the necessary tools, not only to address anxiety, but to talk about conflict and sort of that idea of like, how do you think those two things are integrated or related? And how, do you have sort of clear pathways or methodologies for young people to address internal conflict that they feel? Is it very similar to anxiety, or is it completely different kind of thing?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, in internal conflict, when I'm dealing with people that are anxious, when I'm dealing with kids that are anxious, there's always a battle in there, right? Because there's a battle between what they want and what their anxiety is telling them. So there's a conflict between who they want to be and who they're afraid they can't be. There's always this battle. There's a battle about, I want to take a risk. I want to be vulnerable. I want to step into this relationship, but I don't want to be humiliated. I don't want to be judged. So there's always this conflict. And the thing I talk about a lot with kids with anxiety is rigidity versus flexibility, both internally and externally.
That's right.
And how can we be flexible both in our perspectives of other people and our perspectives of ourselves? We're all a messy work in progress.
Exactly.
So yeah, so there's this, you know, my mentor who I mentioned, Michael, who has been so important to me, he always drops these like nuggets of wisdom that then I repeat. But one of the things he said is that when you're helping somebody develop a more flexible approach to relationships, to themselves, he says there's nothing more dangerous than somebody who's real sure and real wrong. And I have said that to so many kids because we, you know, conflict, we get locked into our perspective.
Yes, we do.
We get stuck internally and externally. And then the other thing that he has said, which I think is just brilliant, is when you're trying to figure out conflict with other people in personal relationships, that there is a difference between something that impacts you personally and something that you need to take personally.
Exactly.
And helping kids as they're dealing with conflict, as they're trying to figure out how they can connect to each other and how they can work through things. How do we help them differentiate between, it's almost like saying like, choose your battles, right? And that if we can step back from this and we can see things from different perspectives, if we can be more flexible in our approaches to things, it takes the emotional intensity down.
Absolutely.
Which is what we're trying to
do. You're talking about 3 of our core values. One of them is seeing people as people, just seeing the humanity in others. The other is inside outside transformation. That means just going inside and making sure the lens that you're using to see someone you are in conflict with is clear. And then instead of pointing the finger, figuring out how you contributed to the conflict. And then the last core value is culture of collaboration. Even though we have our differences, if we don't see eye to eye, there is still a point where we can come together and work together. So it sounds like you're saying all those things. And speaking to our core values. And
that's fabulous.
We don't have that much time, but I just want to do this one question. I think that will help us a lot.
We got time.
Do we? We got time? We got time?
Yeah, take your time. Yeah.
And this is just pertains to around travel anxiety, separation anxiety, and homesickness, because you may not know this, but PeacePlayers is taking a big leap on our global movement, and we are bringing together 100 youth leaders from across the world, from all over our sites. So we have a ton of sites. If I named them, the show would be over because it'd be 2 hours. And we're going to meet in one location to talk about basketball, leadership development, teamwork, and just basically have this amazing cultural exchange. For many of those young leaders, however, this might be the first time that they are traveling away from home. And on top of that, they're traveling without their parents. And so I want to use this time, the few minutes that we have to take any tips that you have for our young people and parents who struggle with travel separation or anxiety. Maybe 2 or 3 things that they can put in. So here's the mistake we make when it comes to homesickness, is that we try and talk kids out of it. And we offer them all of this reassurance, like, it's going to be great. You know, you're going to be, as soon as you get there, you're not going to feel this. And really the message that I want to give to kids that are going to experience homesickness, because this comes up a lot in my practice, is that homesickness comes and goes. And it really is a feeling that you can handle. Feeling homesick is okay. And you might notice that it shows up as you're falling asleep. You might notice that it shows up when something else doesn't go well. You might notice that it shows up when something goes really well and you wish you could share it with your parents. It might show up when you're handling something that's new to you. It is really okay to feel homesick. One of the things we have to really pay attention to when we're talking to kids about their feelings is that they're temporary, and that they come and go, and that you can ride the wave. And that also you just have to tell somebody you're feeling that way, because somebody around you will absolutely be able to relate to that.
Yeah.
So absolutely. we're gonna allow. So we're gonna make room for it. And we're going to make sure that it is temporary. It comes and goes.
Right.
Yeah, it comes and goes.
And then we're gonna share it to make sure.
And then we're gonna share it.
We have that culture of collaboration with us to make sure that we're, that we're not alone. Love it.
And somebody's going to say, of course you feel that way. Of course you feel that way.
Do. Of course. Sit in that jacuzzi, go over there, sit in your feelings, feel all of the feelings.
Feel them all. Like Emmett's mom would
Lynn,
say, feel
it
all the
has
feelings. Yeah.
been an absolute pleasure. We've taken up way
Yes.
too much of your time,
Yes.
but we
Yes.
appreciate it. And also, I want to give you a sort of moment to, I know that people who are listening to this are going to have so many questions of their own personal life, because we're all a little narcissistic and we're like, well, I have these problems that I need help addressing. And
why didn't Lynn talk about me?
Why didn't you talk about me specifically? And there's a bunch of books that people can get that they can read, but also I do know you have a podcast.
I do have a podcast.
She's all set up with her podcast here.
There's an element of that podcast where I don't want to give it away, but could you tell people a little bit what your podcast is and what you do, kind of thing on it?
Yeah. So the podcast is geared toward parents. It's called Flusterclux. It is, it's for parents who worry, which basically is like all parents. And we talk about all sorts of things. We talk about handling your child's separation anxiety. We talk about what happens if you're not anxious, but your partner is a total anxious freak and won't listen to anything. We talk about all those things. We talk about like what happens if your mother-in-law is difficult. We talk about we talk about all those sorts of things. Yeah. So yeah, Flusterclux.
Is there I don't get me wrong, but is there a section in your episode where you can do live callers are in?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we don't do live. So I do sessions. So probably like once a month we do what we call in session. And so I have a Zoom call with a listener who calls in, and it's basically like a therapy session on the podcast. They have an issue and something like that. So we do that about once a month. And I love doing those. Those are pretty fun.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Amazing. Hear that, people, parents,
Yes.
especially of your kids who are about to embark on a very exciting journey in PeacePlayers. If you got some anxiety, if you got some worries, Flusterclux might be the place for you. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
I can't fake it, because I was thinking, when you were saying, I was like, Emmett and I can get some free. Okay.
Can we do a free session?
Can we call tomorrow?
Yeah.
But yes, thank you so much. Lynn, you already know.
Unbelievable.
We love your energy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Seriously.
much. And that's it for today's episode. Thank you all for listening and joining us on this journey. If you like what you heard, we encourage you to like and subscribe. We've got many more conversations and stories to share in the coming weeks that will have love and peace and all that goodness in between. We always say this, but please share with a friend and leave a review like all the wonderful reviews we have right now. And we're going to read some soon. So just be ready for that. But I can't go further without getting Emmett's input on today's show. Emmett, your thoughts?
Season 3 just keeps getting better and better. Like,
Yep.
I feel spoiled at this point with these guests, Chinny. You know, I mean, what were some of the nuggets of information she said? We had
rigidity versus flexibility.
Rigidity
if it resists, then it will persist.
These are like t-shirts / mugs / tattoos people should get. If you want to get those tattoos, we highly condone them. That's all I'm saying. She's just so insightful, smart, funny, down to earth, also just like knows the problem, but also is so adamantly trying to solve the problem, and also not trying to make it seem like a problem, is so adamant in making it seem like it's part of the human experience, which it is. Like we all have anxiety. We all have depression kind of at times. Chinny, did you know that you could learn more about PeacePlayers by visiting our website and following us on social media, mostly at PeacePlayers International. That's on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. You can also follow the Play It Forward podcast, where you get some behind the scenes footage, some day in the life vids, at the Play It Forward podcast on Instagram. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and YouTube to see the video recordings of all of our podcasts. I think also Tumblr. MySpace. Man, I don't know how long I'm going to keep this joke going. It's probably going to be until Chinny goes, stop, for the love of God.
No, that was pretty good. I didn't expect that at that point. Yeah.
I'm going to go to my gratitude journal. I'm going to write down some stuff. I'm going to focus on my anxiety. I'm going to sit in that jacuzzi of feelings, probably cry, but it's